The stars had always belonged to the Zephyrians. For 3,000 years, their ships had ruled the galaxy like kings ruling their kingdom. Their vessels moved through space with grace and power, each one a masterpiece of technology that other. Races could only dream of building. Admiral Kextar stood on the bridge of his mighty warship, the Sovereign Dawn. The ship was huge, bigger than a small city back on his homeworld. Its walls gleamed with a silver light that seemed to come from within the metal itself. Energy shields wrapped around the hull like invisible armor, protecting it from any danger the universe might throw at it. Kextar was old, even by Zephyrian standards. His blue skin had turned darker with age, and the tentacles that grew from his head moved slowly as he thought. He had commanded ships for over 200 years. In all that time, he had never met a species that could challenge Zephyrian power. Bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. His crew worked at their stations with calm efficiency. They knew their jobs well. They had done this many times before. Find a new species, demand their surrender, and add another. Race to the Zephyrian Empire. "Admiral," called out Communications Officer Zekelin from her station. "We are receiving the daily reports from the outer systems." Kextar walked over to her station. His feet made no sound on the smooth metal floor. "What news do you have for me?" Zekelin's large black eyes scanned the data flowing across her screen. 3 new planets have joined the Empire this week. The Corvani system has agreed to our mining contracts. And there is something else, sir. What is it? Our scouts have found a new species in the outer rim. They call themselves humans. They come from a small blue planet in a system with only 1 star. Kextar's tentacles moved with interest. "Tell me about them." "They are very primitive, Admiral. They have only just learned how to travel faster than light. Their ships are made of simple metal. They use chemical rockets and basic energy sources. Our scientists say they are at least 500 years behind our technology." Commander Velthax, Kextar's second-in-command, laughed from his position near the tactical display. "Another primitive race? How boring. Shall we simply send them the standard surrender message and be done with it?" Kextar considered this. The standard procedure was simple. When they found a new species, they would demand immediate surrender. Most races took one look at Zephyrian ships and gave up without a fight. Those who refused were quickly destroyed by weapons they could not understand or defend against. "How many ships do they have?" Kextar asked. Zekelin checked her data again. "Our scouts report seeing only a few dozen vessels. Most of them appear to be cargo ships or exploration vessels. We have detected one that might be a military ship, but it is very small compared to our standards." "Very well," Kextar decided. "Set course for their space. We will make contact with this human military vessel. It has been too long since we added a new species to our collection." The Sovereign Dawn turned toward the outer rim of the galaxy. Its massive engines pushed the ship through space faster than light itself. Inside the ship, 3,000 Zephyrian crew members went about their daily tasks, unaware that they were about to make history. Far away, in a different part of space, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the UNS Defiant. Morrison was a man in his early 40s, with short brown hair and steady gray eyes. He had served in Earth's Navy for 20 years before joining the new space fleet. The Defiant was humanity's newest destroyer. It was small by galactic standards, only 300 meters long. Its hull was made of steel and ceramic armor. The ship's nuclear reactors provided power for its engines and weapons. To human eyes, it was a beautiful and powerful vessel. To the Zephyrians, it would look like a primitive metal box floating in space. "Captain," called Lieutenant Amy Foster from the sensor station, "I'm picking up something strange on long-range sensors." Morrison walked over to her station. "The bridge. was cramped compared to Zephyrian standards, but it felt comfortable to the human crew. "What do you see, Lieutenant?" "There's a large object approaching our position. It's big, sir. Much bigger than anything we've ever built." Morrison felt his heart start to beat faster. This was humanity's first deep space patrol. They had been sent out to explore new star systems and look for signs of intelligent life. The question of whether humans were alone in the universe was about to be answered. "How big?" Morrison asked. Foster checked her readings twice before answering. "At least 3 times our size, Captain. Maybe bigger. And, sir, it's moving faster than should be possible." Chief Engineer Tony Blake's voice came over the communication system from the engine room. "Captain, I'm reading some very strange energy signatures. Whatever that thing is, it's using technology we don't understand." Morrison felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He was not just a ship captain anymore. He was about to become humanity's first ambassador to an alien race. Everything he said and did in the next few hours might determine the future relationship between humans and whatever species was approaching them. "All hands," Morrison announced over the ship's communication system. "This is the captain. We are about to make first contact with an alien species. I want everyone to remain calm and professional. We represent all of humanity today." The crew of the Defiant prepared themselves as best they could. They had trained for this moment, but training could not prepare them for the reality of meeting beings from another world. In space, the two ships moved toward each other like pieces on a cosmic game board. Neither crew knew that this meeting would change the galaxy forever. The moment of first contact arrived with the soft beep of an incoming transmission. Lieutenant Amy Foster looked up from her sensor station with wide eyes. "Captain, we're receiving a signal from the alien vessel. It's in English, sir." "Captain." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. How could aliens speak English? "Put it on the main speakers, Lieutenant." The voice that filled the bridge was cold and mechanical, clearly coming through some kind of translation device. "Primitive vessel of the species, known as humans. You have entered space, claimed by the Zephyrian Confederation. I am Admiral Kekstar, of the Warship Sovereign Dawn. You will surrender your vessel immediately and prepare to accept the authority of our empire. You have one of your time units to comply with this order. Failure to surrender will result in the complete destruction of your ship." The bridge fell silent. Morrison could hear his own heartbeat in the quiet that followed. The aliens' message was clear and threatening. They expected humanity to simply give up without a fight. "Should I respond, Captain?" asked Communications Officer Lieutenant Dan Roberts. Morrison held up his hand. "Not yet. I need to think about this." He turned to his first officer. "Commander Hayes, call a meeting in the briefing room. Senior staff only." 5 minutes later, the senior officers of the Defiance sat around a small metal table in the ship's briefing room. The walls were lined with displays showing technical data about their ship and the alien vessel they faced. Commander Lisa Hayes, Morrison's second in command, spoke first. "Sir, their ship is massive. Our sensors show it's at least 10 times heavier than the Defiant. The energy readings we're getting suggest weapons that could destroy us in seconds." Chief Engineer Tony Blake nodded grimly. "Our armor is good, Captain, but it's just steel and ceramic plates. Their weapons appear to use some kind of pure energy technology. We've never seen anything like it." Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker, the ship's tactical officer, pulled up a comparison chart on the main display. "Look at this size difference. We're like a rowboat next to a battleship. If we try to fight them, we'll be destroyed." Morrison studied the faces of his officers. He could see fear in their eyes, but he could also see something else. These were military personnel who had sworn to defend humanity. None of them were suggesting surrender. What about running? Morrison asked. "Can we escape?" Blake considered this. Our fusion engines are reliable, Captain. They might be primitive compared to alien technology, but they're fast enough to get us back to Earth. We could warn our people about this threat. How long would that take? Hayes asked. At maximum speed. About 6 months to reach Earth. Morrison leaned back in his chair. 6 months was a long time. By then, the aliens might have found Earth on their own. But there was something else bothering him about the alien message. Did anyone else notice how the alien admiral spoke to us? Morrison asked. Parker frowned. What do you mean, sir? He called us primitive. He demanded our surrender without even trying to negotiate. He gave us an ultimatum, like we were children who had misbehaved. Hayes understood where her captain was going. You think they don't respect us? I think they see us as insects, Morrison replied. Something to step on or ignore. If we run away now, we prove them right. Earth needs to know what we're capable of, not just what we're afraid of. Back on the Sovereign Dawn, Admiral Kextar was growing impatient. The human ship had not responded to his ultimatum. They were just sitting there, apparently doing nothing. Perhaps they do not understand our message, suggested Communications Officer Zekelin. Their technology might not be advanced enough to decode our transmission properly. Commander Velfax laughed. Or perhaps they are too frightened to respond. Look at their ship, Admiral. It is a crude metal box with chemical rockets attached. They must realize they have no hope against us. Kextar studied the human vessel on his main display. It was certainly primitive looking. The hull was covered with what appeared to be simple metal plates. He could see engine exhausts that glowed with the orange light of chemical combustion. There were small weapon turrets on the hull, but they looked like toys compared to Zephyrian plasma arrays. Their behavior is strange. Kextar mused. Most species either surrender immediately or attempt to flee when they see our ships. These humans are doing neither. Should we fire a warning shot? Asked Weapons Officer Krendel. A small plasma burst near their ship might help them understand their situation. Kextar considered this. A demonstration of power often convinced. Stubborn species to surrender without bloodshed. Very well. Fire a controlled plasma burst across their bow. Make sure they can see it clearly. The Sovereign Dawn's main weapon array charged with power. Energy that could melt asteroids built up in the ship's plasma chambers. When the weapon fired, it created a brilliant flash of light that could be seen across the star system. The plasma burst passed just in front of the Defiant's nose. The energy was so intense that it overloaded the human ship's sensors for several seconds. When the displays cleared, the crew stared in shock at the readings. Captain, Foster said in a shaky voice, that energy burst contained more power than our entire reactor produces in a month. If it had hit us directly, we'd be vapor, Blake finished. Morrison felt the fear ripple through his crew. The alien demonstration had worked exactly as intended. It showed the humans just how outmatched they were. But instead of making Morrison want to surrender, it made him angry. They're trying to scare us, Morrison said calmly. They want us to give up without a fight. Maybe we should, Parker suggested quietly. Captain, we can't fight something like that. Morrison stood up from his captain's chair. His gray eyes were hard as steel. Lieutenant Commander Parker, how many people live on Earth? About 12 billion, sir. And how many human colonies are there in space? 17, sir? Maybe 20 million people total. Morrison nodded. So if we surrender to these aliens, we're not just giving up our ship. We're potentially giving up the freedom of 12 billion human beings. We're deciding the future of our entire species. The bridge crew listened carefully to their captain's words. They all knew he was right. But sir, Hayes said, we're just one ship. What can we possibly do against their technology? Morrison smiled grimly. We're going to show them that humans don't give up. We're going to teach them that primitive doesn't mean weak." He turned to the communication station. "Roberts, open a channel to the alien ship." "Channel open, sir." Morrison's voice was calm and steady as he spoke. "Admiral Kekstar, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Nations ship Defiant. We are not your subjects, and we do not recognize your authority over human space. If you want our surrender, you're going to have to take it." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. The crew of the Defiant had just declared war on an enemy they could not possibly defeat. But in that moment, they all felt something that the aliens could not understand. With all their advanced technology, they felt pride. The silence that followed Captain Morrison's defiant message seemed to stretch across the void of space itself. On the bridge of the Defiant, every crew member waited for the alien response they knew would come. No one moved. No one spoke. They had just challenged an enemy that could destroy them with ease. Aboard the Sovereign Dawn, Admiral Kekstar stared at his communication display in disbelief. In 3,000 years of Zephyrian expansion, no primitive species had ever refused their surrender demand. Most races begged for mercy. Others tried to flee. None had ever told the mighty Zephyrian fleet to come and take what they wanted. Did they just refuse us? Asked Commander Velfax, his voice filled with confusion. "It appears so," Kekstar replied slowly. His tentacles moved in patterns that showed his growing irritation. These humans seemed to misunderstand their situation. Communications. Officer Zekelin checked her translation systems. "Admiral, the translation is correct. The human captain clearly rejected our authority and challenged us to take their ship by force." Kekstar had ruled through fear and overwhelming power for so long that he had forgotten what defiance looked like. The smaller races of the galaxy had learned not to resist Zephyrian demands. This human response was something entirely new. "Perhaps they are simply too primitive to understand the difference in our capabilities," suggested Weapons Officer Crendell. "Should I charge the main plasma arrays and destroy them quickly?" "No," Kekstar said after a moment of thought. "I want to see what they think they can do. This is interesting." On the Defiant, Captain Morrison was addressing his crew over the ship's communication system. His voice carried to every corner of the vessel, from the bridge to the engine. "Room to the weapons bay. All hands, this is the captain. In a few minutes, we're going to be in a fight for our lives. The enemy ship is bigger than us, stronger than us, and more advanced than us. By every logical measure, we should lose this battle, but we have something they don't understand. We have the determination to never give up." In the engine room, Chief Engineer Tony Blake pushed the ship's nuclear reactors to maximum power. Warning lights flashed as systems operated beyond their normal limits. "Come on, old girl," he muttered to his ship. "Show them what human engineering can do." In the weapons bay, Gunner's Mate First Class Carl Murphy ran final checks on the Defiant's main weapon. The electromagnetic railgun was humanity's answer to energy weapons. It used powerful magnetic fields to accelerate metal projectiles to incredible speeds. Murphy called Ensign Paul Rivera from the weapons control station. "The captain wants maximum power to the railgun." Murphy grinned as he worked. "These aliens want to see what primitive looks like? Let's show them." The railgun was a simple weapon in concept, but brilliant in execution. It fired tungsten projectiles using electromagnetic force. The projectiles were small, no bigger than a man's fist, but they traveled at a significant fraction of light speed. When they hit something, they released tremendous kinetic energy. On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker was analyzing the alien ship's structure. "Captain, their vessel appears to use energy shields for protection." "I'm not seeing any physical armor plating," Morrison nodded. "That makes sense. If all the weapons in their galaxy are energy-based, they wouldn't need armor against physical projectiles. But sir, Parker continued, their energy shields are incredibly powerful. I don't think our weapons can penetrate them. Maybe not, Morrison agreed. But let's see how well their shields handle something they've never encountered before. The first shot from the Defiance railgun caught the Zephyrians completely by surprise. They had been expecting energy weapons, lasers, or plasma beams like every other species used. Instead, a solid tungsten projectile traveling at nearly 8% of light speed slammed into their energy shields. The impact sent shockwaves through the Sovereign Dawn. The energy shields, designed to deflect and absorb energy attacks, suddenly had to deal with pure kinetic force. Warning alarms sounded throughout the alien ship as the shields fluctuated and strained. What was that? Admiral Kekstar demanded as his ship shuddered around him. Science Officer Dexmar quickly analyzed the sensor data. Admiral, they fired. A solid projectile at us. A piece of metal traveling at tremendous velocity. A solid projectile? That's impossible. No species has used kinetic weapons for thousands of years. The impact velocity was nearly 8% of light speed, sir. I don't understand how they achieved such acceleration with their primitive technology. Commander Velfax was studying the tactical display with new interest. Their weapon appears to be electromagnetic in nature. They're using magnetic fields to accelerate the projectile. Kekstar felt a moment of uncertainty. In all his years of command, he had never encountered kinetic weapons. The Zephyrians had moved beyond such crude methods millennia ago. Their energy shields were not designed to handle physical impacts of this magnitude. Damage report? He ordered. Shields are holding, but they're fluctuating, reported the damage control officer. Another impact like that could cause problems. On the Defiant, the crew was celebrating their first successful hit. The railgun had worked exactly as designed, and they had actually damaged an alien ship that was supposedly invincible. Direct hit, Captain, Parker called out. Their shields are showing instability. Morrison allowed himself a small smile. Reload and fire again. Target the same section. The second railgun shot struck the exact same spot on the alien shields. This time, the Zephyrian crew felt the impact more strongly. Lights flickered throughout the ship as power was diverted to maintain shield integrity. How are they doing this? Velfax asked in amazement. Their ship is so small, so primitive. How are they generating such destructive force? Admiral Kekstar was beginning to understand that he had underestimated these humans. Their technology might be simple, but it was also effective. They had found a way to turn basic physics into a powerful weapon. Return fire, he ordered. Show them the power of Zephyrian weapons. The Sovereign Dawn's plasma arrays discharged. With devastating force, beams of pure energy lanced across space toward the human ship. When they struck the Defiant's armor, the metal began to glow and melt, but the human ship did not break apart. The steel and ceramic armor that the aliens had dismissed as primitive absorbed and dispersed the energy. The outer hull plates melted and warped, but the ship's structure held. Damage report, Morrison called out as his ship shook around him. Blake's voice came from the engine room. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 5. Armor is holding, but we're losing atmosphere in several sections. Reactor power is stable. Morrison was amazed that his ship was still intact. The alien weapons were incredibly powerful, but human engineering was tougher than anyone had expected. Sir, Foster called from her sensor station, I'm reading more energy buildup on their ship. They're preparing to fire again. Then we fire first, Morrison replied. Murphy, I need everything you've got. In the weapons bay, Carl Murphy was pushing the railgun beyond its design limits. Rivera, reroute power from life support to the magnetic coils. We're going to give these aliens something to remember. The third shot from the Defiant was the most powerful yet. A tungsten projectile, accelerated by overcharged magnetic fields, struck the alien shields with tremendous force. This time, the Zephyrian energy barriers flickered and collapsed entirely for several seconds. Admiral Kekstar felt his ship shake like it had been struck by an asteroid. "Shields are down," called out his tactical officer. "They're regenerating, but slowly." 4. The first time in his long career, Kekstar felt something he had never experienced in battle. He felt respect for his enemy. "These humans," he said quietly, "they're not like the others." The battle was far from over, but already both sides had learned something important. The aliens had discovered that technological superiority meant nothing without tactical innovation. The humans had learned that determination and clever thinking could overcome seemingly impossible odds. In the cold vacuum of space, two very different philosophies of war were about to collide with explosive results. The battle between the two ships had been going on for 20 minutes, and both vessels showed the scars of combat. The Sovereign Dawn's elegant hull was marked with scorch marks where its own energy shields had failed to stop human projectiles. The Defiant looked like it had been through a furnace, with glowing metal and atmosphere venting from several hull breaches. But the human ship was still fighting, and that fact was driving Admiral Kekstar to distraction. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his science officer. "Their ship should have been destroyed 10 times over. Our plasma weapons are melting their hull, but they continue to function." Science Officer Dexmar was studying the sensor readings with fascination. "Admiral, their ship design is remarkable in its simplicity. They have multiple redundant systems throughout the vessel. When we destroy one section, another takes over its function. And their armor? It's crude but effective. Instead of trying to stop our energy weapons, they let the outer layers absorb the damage while protecting the inner structure. It's like wearing multiple layers of clothing in cold weather." Commander Velthax shook his tentacles in amazement. "Their entire approach to warfare is different from ours. We build ships to avoid damage. They build ships to survive damage." Meanwhile, on the Defiant, Captain Morrison was discovering that human innovation worked best under pressure. His crew was adapting to alien technology in real time, finding new ways to use their simple weapons against an advanced enemy. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker from the tactical station, "I've been studying their shield patterns. Their energy barriers are strongest at the front and sides, but weaker at the rear." "Are you suggesting we try to get behind them?" Morrison asked. "No, sir. Our engines aren't fast enough. But I have another idea. What if we don't aim for their shields directly?" Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Explain." Parker pulled up a tactical display showing the alien ship's structure. Their shields project outward from the hull in a bubble pattern. But if we could ricochet our projectiles off something else first, we might be able to hit them from an angle they're not protecting. Chief Engineer Tony Blake's voice crackled over the communication system. "Captain, there's an asteroid field, about 30,000 kilometers to starboard. Lots of metallic rocks that could deflect our shots." Morrison grinned. Human creativity was about to meet alien technology in a way the Zephyrians would never expect. "Do it. Plot a ricochet course off the largest asteroid." In the weapons bay, gunner's mate Carl Murphy was having his own moment of inspiration. "Ensign, Paul Rivera had suggested something that went against every safety protocol in the book, but it just might work." "Murphy, what if we linked the capacitors from both railgun systems?" Rivera asked. "We could fire a double-charged shot." Murphy wiped sweat from his forehead. The weapons bay was getting hot from the continuous firing. "That could overload the entire system. We might get one shot before the whole thing explodes, but what a shot it would be." Murphy looked at the young ensign and saw the same determination that was driving the entire crew. "All right, kid. Let's see if we can knock some sense into these aliens." The ricochet shot was a masterpiece of human ingenuity and desperation. The tungsten projectile flew past the Sovereign Dawn, struck a nickel-iron asteroid at precisely the right angle, and bounced back toward the alien ship's unprotected rear section. The Zephyrians never saw it coming. "Impact on stern shields," called out the alien damage control officer. "How is that possible? There's nothing behind us." Admiral Kekstar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. They bounced their projectile off an asteroid? Who thinks of such things? Humans, apparently. Velfax replied with grudging admiration. The impact had caused serious damage to the Sovereign Dawn's rear shield generators. Warning lights flashed throughout the ship as automated. Systems tried to compensate for the loss of defensive coverage, but the humans weren't finished. Murphy and Rivera had succeeded in linking their capacitor systems, creating a weapon that was about to deliver more kinetic energy than the railgun was ever designed to handle. "Captain," Murphy called over the communication system, "we've got one shot that will either win this fight or destroy our weapons completely." Morrison didn't hesitate. "Take it." The double-charged railgun shot was visible to the naked eye as it crossed space toward the alien ship. The tungsten projectile glowed white-hot from the electromagnetic forces that had accelerated it to nearly 10% of light speed. When it struck the Sovereign Dawn's weakened rear shields, the result was catastrophic for the Zephyrians. The energy barriers collapsed completely, and the projectile punched through the ship's hull like it was made of paper. Explosive decompression rocked the alien vessel as atmosphere vented into space. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout. The ship and damage control teams rushed to seal the breach. "Report." Admiral Kekstar shouted over the noise of alarms and emergency systems. "Hull breach in Engineering Section 7, called out the damage control officer. "We've lost 3 shield generators and our secondary power distribution center." For the first time in Zephyrian history, a primitive species had inflicted serious damage on one of their warships. The psychological impact was almost as devastating as the physical damage. "Admiral," Science Officer Dexmar said quietly, "I've been analyzing their combat tactics. They're not fighting like any species we've encountered before." "How so?" "Most races try to match our technology or find ways to defend against our weapons. The humans are doing neither. They're using our expectations against us." Admiral Kekstar studied the human ship on his display. The Defiant was battered and scarred, but it was still there, still fighting. Its crew had taken everything the Zephyrians could throw at them and found a way to strike back. "Sir," Communications Officer Zekelin interrupted. "We are receiving a transmission from the human ship. Put it through." Captain Morrison's voice filled the alien bridge. "Admiral Kekstar, this is Captain Morrison. I'm going to give you the same chance you gave us. Withdraw from human space immediately, or we'll continue this fight until one of our ships is destroyed." The audacity of the human captain demanding a Zephyrian withdrawal was staggering. Commander Velfax started to laugh, but the sound died in his throat when he looked at the tactical display. The human ship had damaged them badly. "Should I reply, Admiral?" Zekelin asked. Kekstar was quiet for a long moment. He was reassessing everything he thought he knew about warfare and about these strange creatures called humans. Their ship was smaller, their technology was primitive, and by all logical measures, they should have been defeated within minutes. But logic, he was learning, had very little to do with how humans fought. "Their weapons bay appears to have suffered damage from their last shot," reported Weapons Officer Krendel. "Their main gun may be offline. And our status? We still have superior firepower, Admiral. Our main plasma arrays are undamaged. We could destroy them now." Kekstar looked at the human ship again. It was wounded, and possibly unable to fire its devastating kinetic weapon. The logical choice was to finish the battle and destroy an enemy that had dared to challenge Zephyrian supremacy, but something made him pause. In 20 minutes of combat, these humans had shown more tactical innovation than most species displayed in decades of warfare. They had turned simple physics into an art form of destruction. They had made him, a veteran of 100 battles, feel uncertain about the outcome of a fight. Most importantly, they had never even considered surrender, despite facing impossible odds. "Admiral," Belfax prompted, "your orders?" Kekstar made a decision that would change galactic history. "Hold fire. I want to speak with their captain directly." On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Morrison was preparing for what he assumed would be the final phase of the battle. His ship was badly damaged, his weapons were offline, and his crew was exhausted. But none of them had given up hope. "Captain," Lieutenant Roberts called from communications, "the alien ship is hailing us again." Morrison straightened his uniform, jacket, and prepared to face whatever the aliens had to say. "Put it through." Admiral Kekstar's image appeared on the main screen. The alien looked tired, and Morrison could see battle damage in the background of the alien bridge. "Captain Morrison," Kekstar said slowly, "your species has surprised me today. In 3,000 years of expansion, we have never encountered tactics like yours." Morrison waited for the alien to continue. "I am prepared to discuss terms," Kekstar sighed, "not for your surrender, but for a ceasefire. I believe the Galactic Council needs to meet your people properly." Morrison felt a surge of triumph, but he kept his expression neutral. "As equals, Admiral, not as subjects." There was a long pause before Kekstar responded. "As equals, Captain Morrison. As equals." The silence that followed Admiral Kekstar's words seemed to echo across the vastness of space. On both ships, crews who had been fighting for their lives just moments before now stood in stunned quiet. The impossible had happened. A human ship had fought a Zephyrian dreadnought to a standstill. Captain Morrison looked around his damaged bridge. Smoke still drifted from overloaded circuits, and several of his crew members showed signs of injury from the battle. But they were alive, and they were free. More importantly, they had earned something that no human had ever possessed before: the respect of an advanced alien civilization. "Admiral Kekstar," Morrison said carefully, "I accept your proposal for a ceasefire, but I want to be clear about something. Humanity will never bow to any empire, no matter how powerful. We will defend ourselves and our colonies against any threat." On the Sovereign Dawn, Admiral Kekstar listened to the human captain's words with new understanding. These creatures were not like any species the Zephyrians had encountered before. They possessed a quality that had been missing from galactic civilization for thousands of years: the absolute refusal to accept defeat. "I understand, Captain Morrison," Kekstar replied. "Your point has been made quite effectively." Commander Vilthax approached his admiral quietly. "Sir, what are your intentions?" "The Council will expect a full report on this encounter." Kekstar's tentacles moved in patterns that showed deep thought. "The Council will receive an accurate report. These humans have proven themselves worthy of respect, not conquest." Science Officer Dexmar was still analyzing the tactical data from the battle. "Admiral, I've completed my study of their combat methods. It's remarkable. They use innovation and adaptation as weapons." "Explain." "Most species develop their military technology over centuries, then rely on that technology to win battles. The humans improvised new tactics during the fight itself. They learned from each exchange and modified their approach in real time." Kekstar nodded slowly. "They think like warriors, not just soldiers." On the Defiant, Chief Engineer Tony Blake was giving Captain Morrison a damage report. "Sir, we're in rough shape. Hull breach is on 5 decks. Main weapon system is offline, and we're running on backup power. But the ship is sound. We can make it home." Morrison felt a deep sense of pride in his crew and his ship. The Defiant had been built by human hands, using human technology, and it had proven itself against the most advanced warship in the galaxy. "Captain," Lieutenant Amy Foster called from her sensor station, "I'm detecting movement from the alien ship. They're extending what looks like a communication array." Admiral Kekstar's voice came through the speakers again. "Captain Morrison, I am transmitting our star charts and contact protocols to your ship. Your people will need this information when they meet with the Galactic Council." Morrison was surprised by the alien's generosity. "Why are you helping us?" "Because today you taught me something important," Kekstar replied. "For too long, the galaxy has been ruled by the assumption that advanced technology guarantees victory. You have shown that courage and intelligence are more powerful than any weapon." The data transfer took several minutes. When it was complete, the Defiant possessed information about dozens of alien civilizations, trade routes, and diplomatic protocols that would have taken humanity decades to discover on their own. "There is something else you should know," Kekstar continued. "The Galactic Council consists of 12 major civilizations. We Zephyrians are considered one of the most powerful. Your defeat of our ship will send shockwaves throughout known space." Morrison realized that this battle had implications far beyond the 2 ships involved. "What kind of shockwaves?" "Some species will fear you. Others will want to ally with you. Many will test you as we did today. Your people must be prepared for what comes next." Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker was studying the alien star charts that had been transmitted to their ship. "Captain, this data shows the locations of several hostile civilizations. Some of them are even larger than the Zephyrian Confederation." Morrison felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders again. The human race had just announced its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. They had proven they could fight, but now they would have to prove they could survive. "Admiral Kekstar," Morrison said, "what advice would you give to humanity as we enter galactic civilization?" The alien admiral considered this question carefully. "Never lose the qualities that made you victorious today. Your willingness to adapt, your refusal to surrender, and most importantly, your ability to innovate under pressure. These traits are rare in the galaxy." "And what about the Zephyrian Confederation? Will you be our enemies or our allies?" Kekstar's image showed what might have been a smile, though it was difficult to tell with alien features. "Captain Morrison, any species that can damage my ship with primitive kinetic weapons is a species I want as an ally, not an enemy." The formal first contact protocols took another hour to complete. Both ships exchanged basic information about their governments, their territories, and their intentions. The Zephyrians were surprised to learn that humanity had no empire, no single ruler, and no unified military command. Earth was governed by a collection of nations that somehow managed to work together when necessary. "How do you make decisions without a central authority?" Commander Velthax asked during one of the transmissions. Morrison smiled. "Very slowly and with a lot of arguments. But when we finally agree on something, the entire human race stands behind it." As the diplomatic exchanges continued, both crews began the process of repairing their ships. The Zephyrians used advanced nanotechnology to rebuild damaged sections of their hull. The humans relied on welding torches, metal patches, and old-fashioned engineering skill. But both approaches worked, and both crews took pride in their methods. Finally, Admiral Kekstar made one last transmission to the human ship. "Captain Morrison, I will be reporting to the Galactic Council that humanity is ready for formal contact. I recommend that your people prepare ambassadors and establish a unified position for galactic relations." "We'll be ready," Morrison replied. "And Admiral, thank you for giving us the chance to prove ourselves." Thank you for reminding an old warrior what real courage looks like." The two ships separated slowly, each heading back toward their home territories. The Sovereign Dawn would carry news of humanity's existence to the galactic capital. The Defiant would return to Earth with proof that humans could hold their own among the stars. But the battle had changed both crews in ways they were only beginning to understand. The Zephyrians had learned that technological superiority meant nothing without the will to use it creatively. The humans had learned that determination and innovation could overcome seemingly impossible odds. As Captain Morrison stood on his bridge, watching the alien ship disappear into the distance, he knew that humanity's future among the stars would be challenging. There would be other battles, other tests, and other species who would underestimate human resolve. But today had proven something important. Humans belonged in the galaxy not because of their technology or their weapons, but because of their spirit. They had the courage to face the unknown, the wisdom to adapt when faced with superior force, and the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The age of human expansion into the galaxy had begun with the sound of railgun fire and the clash of two very different philosophies of war. And in the end, it was not the most advanced technology that had won the day. It was the simple, powerful idea that some things are worth fighting for, no matter what the odds. 6 months later, when the Defiant limped into Earth orbit with its battle scars still visible, the entire human race would learn what their representatives had accomplished. The story of the battle would be told and retold, inspiring a generation of humans to reach for the stars. But that day belonged to the future. For now, Captain Jake Morrison and his crew had done something that would echo through galactic history. They had announced humanity's arrival in the cosmos, not with words or treaties, but with the thunderous declaration that Earth's children would never kneel to anyone. The galaxy would never be the same.
The bright blue light of Earth's first functional faster-than-light drive engine filled the launch bay as Captain John Miller walked the length of the EAS Discovery. His footsteps echoed in the massive chamber as engineers made final adjustments to the ship that would carry humanity's hopes to the stars. "Captain on deck," called out Lieutenant Ryan Ford, standing straight as Miller approached. "At ease, Lieutenant," Miller said with a small smile. "How's our girl looking today?" "Ready for her big moment, sir. Dr. Williams is already aboard running final checks on the first contact protocols." Miller nodded and climbed the boarding ramp. The inside of the Discovery hummed with activity as crew members rushed through last-minute preparations. This wasn't just another test flight. Intelligence from deep space probes had confirmed the existence of an organized galactic community, a council of some sort. Today, humanity would announce itself to the wider universe. "Doctor," Lisa Williams looked up from her station as Miller entered the bridge. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and stress lines marked her face after weeks of minimal sleep. "Captain," she greeted him. "The xenolinguistic programs are loaded and ready. If these council species use any form of logical language structure, we should be able to establish basic communication." "And if they don't?" Miller asked. Williams shrugged. "Then we'll have to get creative. That's what humans do best, right?" 6 hours later, the Discovery arrived at the coordinates specified in the automated message humans had intercepted months ago. A massive space station hanging like a jewel against the backdrop of an unfamiliar solar system. The structure dwarfed their ship, stretching nearly 20 miles from end to end in a spiral pattern unlike anything human architects had designed. "My God," whispered Communications Officer Pam Green. "It's beautiful." "And old," added Miller, noting the visible layers of different construction styles. "Very old." A signal came through on their communications array. The universal translator stuttered for a moment before producing words the humans could understand. "Unidentified vessel, you have entered Council space. Identify yourself and state your purpose." Miller straightened his uniform and nodded to Green. "This is Captain John Miller of the Earth Alliance ship Discovery. We come in peace as representatives of humanity. seeking diplomatic contact with the Galactic Council. There was a long pause. Miller exchanged glances with Williams, who shrugged. Earth vessel, the voice finally replied. You will be guided to Docking Bay 17. Prepare to receive boarding instructions. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The Discovery docked at the massive station, and the human delegation, Miller, Williams, and 3 other specialists, were escorted through winding corridors by silent, multi-limbed beings with translucent skin. They finally arrived at a vast chamber where representatives of at least 24 alien species sat in tiered seating around a central platform. Miller tried not to stare, but the diversity was overwhelming. Beings of all shapes, sizes, and apparent biological compositions watched the humans with expressions ranging from curiosity to what might have been disgust. A tall, blue-skinned figure with silver eyes approached. I am Ambassador Zorax of the Vexari Confederation, appointed to handle initial contact with your species. Welcome to Council Station Prime. Miller extended his hand, then awkwardly withdrew it when Zorax made no move to reciprocate. Thank you for receiving us, Ambassador. We're eager to establish peaceful relations. Indeed, Zorax said, voice cool and measured. The Council has been observing your civilization since you developed nuclear capabilities. Your petition for membership will be heard, though I must inform you that newly spacefaring species typically begin with protected status rather than full membership. Dr. Williams stepped forward. Protected status? What exactly does that entail? A smaller orange-skinned alien with large, expressive eyes joined them. It means the Council would ensure no harm comes to your people while you mature. The alien said, I am Counselor Neem of the Thulian Collective. Unlike my colleague, I believe in being direct with newcomers. Mature? Miller's voice carried a hint of offense. With respect, Counselor, humanity has a rich civilization, thousands of years old. Zorax made a sound that might have been a laugh. Captain Miller, the youngest council member race, has been spacefaring for over 7,000 years, the eldest for nearly 1 million. Your kind achieved powered flight barely 2 centuries ago. Before Miller could respond, alarms blared throughout the chamber. Council members rose from their seats as security personnel rushed in. What's happening? Williams asked. Neem's large eyes narrowed. Draconid ships have breached our outer defenses. Impossible. They wouldn't dare attack Council. Station Prime. The chamber shook as something impacted the station. Zorax was already moving toward a protected exit, but many Council members seemed frozen in shock. Is there an evacuation plan? Miller asked sharply. When no one immediately answered, he turned to his team. Dr. Williams, help these people to safety. Lieutenant Ford, with me. Without waiting for permission, Miller accessed the station's public information terminal, quickly locating a station map. Ford, it looks like security armaments are stored here, he said, pointing. Let's move, Zorax called after them. This is not your concern, humans. Our security forces will handle this. Miller ignored him, leading Ford through the corridors. They reached the security station to find several guards already down, and 3 reptilian figures, Draconids, Miller assumed, attempting to override the station's defense systems. The Draconids were tall, heavily armored, and carried energy weapons that had already left scorch marks on the walls. They turned as the humans entered, hissing in surprise. No weapons, Ford muttered. Improvise, Miller replied, grabbing a maintenance tool from a nearby panel. What followed shocked the Council security officers who arrived minutes later. Despite being outgunned and facing physically superior opponents, the 2 humans moved with unexpected speed and coordination. Miller used the environment to create distractions while Ford outflanked their opponents. Within moments, 2 Draconids were unconscious and the third found himself pinned to the floor, Miller's improvised weapon at his throat. Surrender, Miller said calmly, as though subduing armed aliens was something he did every Tuesday. When Council security finally arrived, led by Zorax and Neem, they found the humans had not only neutralized the immediate threat, but had also begun restoring the station's defensive shields. How did you? Zorax began. Basic tactical assessment, Miller said, helping a wounded security officer into a chair. They were focused on the control panel, not the entrances. Rookie mistake. Later, as the Discovery crew helped with emergency repairs, Neem approached Williams. Your captain and lieutenant acted without hesitation, the Thulian said. Most knew. Species freeze when confronted with unexpected violence. Williams smiled slightly. Humans adapt quickly. It's kind of our thing. Across the room, Zorax was speaking with a high-ranking council member, gesturing toward the humans with what appeared to be concern. Your colleague doesn't seem impressed, Williams noted. Neem's eyes followed her gaze. Ambassador Zorax believes your quick action was mere luck. I'm not so certain. The alien paused, seemed to consider something, then added, There's an old council saying, judge not the sapient by their tools, but by how they use them when the pattern breaks. And how did we do? Williams asked. Neem's expression was unreadable. That remains to be seen, Dr. Williams. That remains to be seen. 6 months had passed since first contact. The Earthship Discovery had returned home, and now a proper diplomatic mission had been established on Council Station Prime. General Susan Clark stood at the viewport of the human embassy, watching the slow dance of ships coming and going from the massive station. At 52, with salt and pepper hair cut in a practical style, Clark had served in Earth's military for 30 years before being selected as military liaison to the Council. Beautiful view, isn't it? Said Alan Brooks as he joined her. The young diplomatic aide carried 2 cups of coffee, a luxury item that had become surprisingly popular among certain council species. Too beautiful, Clark said, accepting the coffee. 6 months of negotiations and we're still classified as a protected species. Something doesn't add up. Brooks nodded. Ambassador Miller feels the same way. The Council claims it's standard procedure, but their actions suggest otherwise. The random inspections, the accidental security breaches, the so-called pirate attacks on our supply ships. Clark counted off. They're testing us, Brooks. The question is, why? Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime from the communication panel. Brooks answered it, then turned to Clark with a frown. Emergency meeting with High Chancellor, Kelvik in 30 minutes. Apparently there's been an incident at Mining Outpost 7. Mining Outpost 7 was humanity's first joint operation with the Council. A small asteroid mining facility, staffed by 20 humans and a dozen alien technicians. Clark had visited it just last week and found everything in good order. What kind of incident, she asked. They wouldn't say, just that it's urgent. 90 minutes later, Clark sat in a Council emergency response center, watching footage of the outpost. A coolant leak had exposed 3 sections to lethal radiation. Council engineers estimated that the 15 people trapped inside, 10 humans, and 5 aliens, had less than 6 hours before radiation exposure would kill them. Standard evacuation procedures will take at least 8 hours, said High Chancellor Kelvik, a tall, thin alien with silvery skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. I regret to inform you that survival prospects are minimal. Clark studied the station schematics. What about using the maintenance tunnels to reach the emergency shuttles? The radiation levels would be fatal within minutes, replied one of the Council engineers. Not if we improvise radiation shielding, Clark said. Look, the outpost has a water reclamation system. If we drain it and use the tanks as movable shields, we could create a safe path. Kelvik's expression was unreadable. An interesting suggestion, General, but impractical. The protocols for such emergencies are clear. With respect, Chancellor, Clark interrupted. Protocols won't save those people. Action will. She stood up. I'm contacting our team at the outpost. What followed was a demonstration of human innovation that left the Council observers stunned. Clark coordinated with the humans at the outpost, who quickly implemented her shielding plan with modifications suggested by the trapped miners themselves. They drained the water system, used the tanks as mobile radiation shields, and created a human chain to move the injured aliens to safety first, then the remaining humans. Against all Council predictions, every person was evacuated with only minor radiation exposure. As the last shuttle departed the outpost, Clark noticed something odd on one of the monitors. A small device attached to the coolant system that didn't match any standard component. "Brooks," she said quietly, "get me the maintenance logs for that outpost. I want to know every person who accessed that coolant system in the past month." "You think this wasn't an accident?" Brooks said. It wasn't a question. Clark's eyes met his. "I think we're being evaluated, and I want to know why." Across the station, in a secure meeting room, High Chancellor Kelvik reviewed the outcome with several council members and a small, featureless alien known only as Agent Mira. "Remarkable," said one council member. "They adapted to a critical failure scenario with a solution outside all standard protocols, and they succeeded. Just as they did during the Draconid attack," added another. "And the navigation failure near Sector 12. Kelvik turned to Agent Mira. "Your assessment?" Mira's voice was flat, emotionless. "Human problem-solving abilities continue to exceed projections. They do not think in linear patterns like most council species. When faced with a crisis, they become more focused, not less. They improvise with whatever materials are available. Most concerning, they instinctively prioritize group survival over individual risk." "Meaning," Kelvik pressed, "the Thulians adapt through advanced technology. The Vexari adapt through social structures. Humans adapt through behavior. Immediate, unpredictable changes in tactics based on environmental conditions." Mira paused. "In the 3 crisis scenarios we have engineered, humans have demonstrated problem-solving approaches that appear in no council tactical database." Kelvik's silver skin rippled with concern. "Continue the tests. I want to see how they respond to a life support failure." Meanwhile, in Earth's embassy, Clark and Brooks had discovered a pattern. Each accident involving human ships or facilities had been preceded by unusual maintenance checks or unscheduled inspections. "They're testing our responses," Clark said, looking at the evidence laid out before them. "The question is, are they trying to determine if we're worthy of membership or if we're a threat?" Brooks considered this. "Maybe both. The Council has existed for thousands of years, maintaining peace through strict protocols and standardized responses. Then we show up, improvising solutions and ignoring their carefully established procedures. Because their procedures weren't working," Clark pointed out. "That's how we see it," Brooks said. "But from their perspective, unpredictability might be the most dangerous trait a species can possess." Clark's communication device chimed. She answered it, listened for a moment, then looked at Brooks with concern. "There's a problem at the embassy residence station. Life support is failing on 3 decks, including the one with the children's school." Brooks stood immediately. "That's over 60 kids, plus teachers and resident staff." Clark was already moving toward the door. "And I bet the Council's standard protocols would take too long to evacuate everyone safely." "You think this is another test?" Clark's expression hardened. "I'm certain of it. And this time, they've gone too far. Let's show them exactly what humans do when our children are threatened." As they hurried to the transport, neither noticed the small, nondescript alien watching them from the shadows. Agent Mira, recording every word, every expression, every reaction for the Council's growing file on humanity's capabilities. In her secure communication to High Chancellor Kelvik, Mira would later note, "Unlike previous tests, this scenario generated an immediate emotional response alongside tactical planning. Monitoring suggests increased heart rates, stress hormones, and neural activity, yet improved decision-making speed. Preliminary conclusion: humans do not simply tolerate crisis conditions. In some ways, they function better within them. Recommend highest caution classification." High Chancellor Kelvik received this report with growing unease. The tests had been designed to expose human weaknesses. Instead, they were revealing capabilities that hadn't been seen in the galaxy for thousands of years, not since the dark times before the Council's formation. A year had passed since Earth joined the Galactic Council as a probationary member. After the series of accidents that tested human response capabilities, relations had stabilized. Humanity had proven resourceful enough to earn basic trading rights and permission to establish colonies on 3 uninhabited planets within Council space. Commander Eric Peterson stood on the bridge of the EAS Defender, Earth's newest warship. Though small by Council standards, the Defender incorporated both human innovation and limited Council technology that Earth had been permitted to use. "Status report," Peterson said, running a hand through his short brown hair. At 38, he was young for his command, but his quick thinking during the Mars colony crisis had earned him this position. Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez looked up from his console. "All systems normal, sir. We're on schedule for the diplomatic escort to Thulian Prime." Peterson nodded. The mission was simple: escort Earth's diplomatic team to a cultural exchange on the Thulian homeworld. A routine assignment meant to show the Council that humans could follow protocol. Dr. Karen White joined him at the viewport. As a military historian specializing in ancient Earth warfare, she had been added to the crew to help understand Council military doctrine. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said, indicating the stars. "Hard to believe there's trouble brewing out there." "Trouble?" Peterson asked. "Just rumors from the Council military liaisons. Something about increased Draconid activity along the outer borders." Before Peterson could reply, an emergency signal blared through the ship's communication system. Lieutenant Rodriguez worked quickly to isolate the transmission. "Sir, it's a distress call from HYF SCI. They're under attack by Draconid forces." "HYF SCI?" Peterson frowned. "That's a Council agricultural world. Patch it through." The view screen filled with the image of a Thulian official, panic evident in his large eyes. "This is Governor Lim of HYF SCI. We are under heavy bombardment. From Draconid warships. Our defenses are failing. Council response teams estimate arrival in 7 hours. We will not survive that long. Any vessels in range, please assist." The transmission ended abruptly. Peterson turned to his navigation officer. "How far are we from HYF SCI?" 40 minutes at maximum speed, sir." Peterson hesitated. Their orders were clear: proceed directly to Thulian Prime. Deviation required authorization from Earth Command. "Sir," Dr. White said quietly, "HYF SCI has a population of 12 million, mostly civilians." Peterson made his decision. "Set course for HYF SCI maximum speed. Alert the horizon and venture to follow our lead." Rodriguez looked up in surprise. "Sir, that's against protocol. We're supposed to get authorization from—" "I'm aware, Lieutenant. Log my decision and the reasons for it. I'll face the consequences later." Peterson turned to communications. "Send a message to Earth Command informing them of our course change. Then contact the Council fleet. Tell them we're responding to the distress call and will attempt to hold position until they arrive." 43 minutes later, the 3 human ships dropped out of FTL travel near HYF SCI. The scene that greeted them was chaos. 5 massive Draconid warships bombarded the planet's surface, while smaller attack vessels engaged the planet's few defensive satellites. "Analysis," Peterson ordered. "Draconid forces outnumber us 3-1 in ship count and at least 5-1 in firepower," Rodriguez reported. "Council defensive protocols would recommend withdrawal and waiting for reinforcements." "Doctor," White studied the tactical display. "The Draconids are following standard aggressive pattern Sigma. It's in the Council tactical database. They expect defenders to form a unified blocking formation." She looked up at Peterson. "That's what they're prepared for." Peterson smiled, grimly. "Then let's give them something they're not prepared for. Signal the horizon and venture. We're going to implement broken arrow formation." "Sir?" Rodriguez looked confused. "That's not in the Council tactical database." "No, it's not," Peterson agreed. "It's based on an ancient Earth naval tactic. Dr. White can brief you while I speak with the other captains." 20 minutes later, the 3 human ships initiated their attack. Instead of forming a unified defensive line as Council doctrine dictated, they split up and attacked from 3 completely different vectors, using HYF SCI's moon for cover and its gravity to accelerate their smaller ships to unexpected speeds. The Draconid forces accustomed to the predictable responses of Council species were thrown into confusion. Their battle computers, programmed with thousands of years of Council tactical data, couldn't predict the humans' seemingly erratic movements. The Defender flew directly toward the largest Draconid ship, then suddenly cut power, drifting dead in space. The Draconids, following their programmed responses, ignored the apparently disabled vessel to focus on the still active threats. This allowed the Defender to drift close enough to launch a concentrated attack on the enemy flagship's propulsion systems. Meanwhile, the Horizon executed a slingshot maneuver around the moon, achieving a velocity that Council ships never attempted in combat conditions. The Venture used mining explosives, not traditional weapons, to create a debris field that confused Draconid sensors. From the Council command ship Righteous Doctrine, now rushing to the scene, Council General Thorm watched the battle with growing astonishment. "What are they doing?" he demanded. "Those maneuvers violate all tactical logic." His tactical officer, a veteran of 3 border conflicts, shook his head in disbelief. "The humans are using the moon's gravity as a weapon. They're intentionally overloading their engines beyond safety parameters. They're not fighting, according to any recognized doctrine. And they're winning," Thorm said quietly. Indeed, despite being vastly outgunned, the human ships had disabled 2 Draconid vessels and forced the others to break off their planetary bombardment. The cost was high. The Horizon had suffered severe damage, and the Defender's engine core was approaching critical failure from the strain of maneuvers no Council engineer would ever authorize. When the Council fleet finally arrived, they found the Draconid attackers in retreat, with 1 ship captured and 2 disabled. The 3 human vessels were damaged but intact, and the planet's major population centers had been saved. General Thorm requested immediate communication with Commander Peterson. "Your actions today saved millions of lives," Thorm said, his tone a mixture of admiration and concern. "But your tactics, they were unlike anything recorded in Council history." Peterson, his uniform scorched and his bridge filled with smoke from damaged systems, straightened with pride. "We did what was necessary, General. Where we come from, that's all that matters in battle. You risked your ships and crews on maneuvers with a less than 30% survival probability," Thorm noted. "Council doctrine would never permit such risks." Dr. White stepped forward. "With respect, General, humans have a saying from our military. History, who dares wins. Sometimes the unexpected approach succeeds precisely because it is deemed too risky to attempt." After the communication ended, Thorm turned to his senior aide. "Prepare a full report for the High Council. Include every detail of the human tactics. They must see this." "Is something wrong, General?" the aide asked. Thorm watched the human ships on his view screen, remembering ancient warnings passed down through generations of Council military leaders. "These humans," he said softly, "they fight like the legends, like the stories of the great wars before the Council's formation." He turned away from the screen. "Send the report directly to High Chancellor Kelvik. Security classification, existential concern." The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was silent as the recording of the battle at Helix Thror ended. Over 300 representatives from different species sat in the curved tiers, many looking disturbed by what they had just witnessed. High Chancellor Kelvik stood at the center of the chamber, his silver skin reflecting the soft blue light. "This emergency session of the Council will now discuss the human question," Kelvik announced. "The defense of Helix Thror, while successful, has raised serious concerns about human military doctrine and capabilities." Frank Johnson, the human ambassador to the Council, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. At his side, Beth Rivera, Earth's cultural attaché, whispered, "They make it sound like saving 12 million lives was a bad thing." Johnson nodded slightly. "To them, how we did it matters more than what we accomplished." A tall, thin figure rose from the highest tier of seats. Unlike most Council members, this being wore robes that concealed most of its features. Only glowing eyes were visible within the shadow of its hood. "The Grand Councilor Zenith wishes to address the chamber," announced Kelvik with obvious surprise. "This is most unusual." A hush fell over the assembly. Johnson leaned toward Rivera. I've been here for 18 months and never seen this Zenith speak before. Some say he's been on the council for over 1,000 years. Grand Counselor Zenith's voice filled the chamber without seeming to rise above a whisper. I have reviewed the reports from Helix 4, as well as all data collected on humans since first contact. It is time we address the truth that many have sensed, but few have spoken. Aloud, the ancient being touched a control, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed Earth, rotating slowly. This world, Zenith continued, has hosted over 15,000 wars in its recorded history. Their technological development has been driven primarily by military necessity. In the brief century between their first powered flight and their first faster-than-light journey, they created weapons capable of destroying their entire civilization. Twice. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Zenith touched another control, and the display changed to show human DNA. More concerning is their biological nature. Humans evolved as persistence hunters, predators who would pursue prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They can regenerate from injuries that would kill most council species. They can survive temperature ranges, radiation levels, and toxic environments that would be fatal to many of us. Ambassador Johnson stood. With respect, Grand Counselor, humanity has moved beyond its violent past. Our wars have decreased in frequency and intensity over the past century. We seek peaceful cooperation with the Council. Zenith's glowing eyes fixed on Johnson. I do not doubt your sincerity, Ambassador. But consider this. In the test scenarios we arranged, including life-threatening situations, humans consistently demonstrated not just survival skills, but innovation under pressure. At Helix 4, human ships performed maneuvers that our military analysts had deemed suicidally risky, yet they succeeded. From another section of the chamber, a bulky armored figure rose. I am Counselor Drav of the Martial Oversight Committee. The Grand Counselor speaks truth that many wish to ignore. Humans represent a pattern we have seen before. The chamber display changed again, showing ancient ruins on a world Johnson didn't recognize. Twice in our 50,000-year history, Drav continued, the Council has encountered species with humanity's particular combination of traits: adaptability, aggressive problem-solving, and capacity for violence when threatened. The first nearly destroyed half the galaxy before they were contained. The second caused the 3-century war that almost ended the Council itself. Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber. Johnson looked at Rivera in shock. This was information that had never been shared with Earth. Another council member stood. Are you suggesting humans are a threat to galactic peace? They have followed all restrictions we placed on their expansion. They have shared their cultural achievements. Their art, music, and literature show deep capacity for empathy. Yes, Dravi agreed, as did the others before they felt threatened. It is not that humans are inherently destructive. It is what they become when challenged that concerns us. Zenith raised a hand for silence. Ambassador Johnson, your people saved Helix 4 through tactics no council species would have attempted. You ignored safety protocols, military doctrine, and conventional wisdom about what was possible. This adaptability is both your greatest strength and what makes you potentially dangerous. Beth Rivera stood beside Johnson. Grand Counselor, if I may speak. When Zenith nodded, she continued, You've studied our wars, but have you studied why we fought them? Humans fight fiercely to protect others, not just themselves. At Helix, therefore, our ships risked everything for a world not even our own. A noble sentiment, said Counselor Drav, but our simulations tell a different story. He activated another display showing complex mathematical models. If humanity were to feel truly threatened by the Council and fully mobilize for war, our projections suggest they could develop weapons and tactics beyond our ability to counter within a single generation. Johnson frowned. These simulations assume we would want to fight the Council. We don't. Not now, Zenith agreed. But what if you discovered that we have been systematically restricting your access to certain technologies? That we have placed hidden monitoring devices on your colonies? That we have contingency plans to contain your species if necessary? A shocked silence fell over the human delegation. Johnson stared at Zenith, then at Kelvik. Is this true? High Chancellor Kelvik's silver skin rippled with emotion. The Council must protect the peace of the galaxy. Sometimes this requires precautions. Precautions? Johnson's voice rose. You've been spying on us while claiming to welcome us. Kelvik raised his hands. Please understand, this is standard protocol for any species with your potential. Rivera touched Johnson's arm, urging restraint. What exactly are you proposing, Chancellor? It was Councillor Drav who answered. The Marshall Oversight Committee recommends severe restrictions on human expansion and technology access until proper safeguards can be implemented. We cannot risk another civilization with your capabilities developing unchecked. Johnson looked around the chamber, seeing fear in many alien faces. You're talking about containing us, limiting our growth because you're afraid of what we might become. We are afraid, Zenith admitted quietly, because we have seen what came before. The ruins you saw were once the homeworld of a species called the Precursors. Like you, they were adaptable, innovative, and fierce when threatened. When they felt the Council was limiting their potential, they began a war that lasted 3 centuries and left 1,000 worlds barren. The chamber fell silent again. Johnson exchanged a look with Rivera, both processing the implications of what they were hearing. The Council will vote tomorrow on the proposed restrictions, Kelvik announced. This session is adjourned. As the human delegation left the chamber, Rivera whispered to Johnson, This is worse than we thought. They're not just cautious about us, they're genuinely terrified. Johnson nodded grimly. And the worst part is, I'm not sure they're wrong to be afraid. If Earth learns about these secret monitoring programs and containment plans, Admiral, Wright won't take it well, Rivera finished. None of our military will. We need to contact Earth immediately, Johnson said. They need to know what we're facing. Unknown to them, Agent Mira watched from the shadows, recording their conversation for the Council's growing file on human responses to perceived threats. 3 days after the Emergency Council session, Admiral Paul Wright stood in Earth's Orbital Command Center, his face grim as he reviewed the information sent by Ambassador Johnson. At 60, with weathered features and steel-gray hair, Wright had seen his share of conflicts before taking command of Earth's defense forces. They've been watching us like lab rats, he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Setting up tests, keeping technology from us, planting surveillance on our colonies. General Susan Clark nodded. And now they want to officially restrict our growth and development. The proposed measures would limit us to our current 3 colonies and ban research into 87 different technology areas. All because they're afraid of what we might do if provoked. Wright looked at the holographic display showing the location of Earth's small fleet. How quickly can we ready the ships for deployment? Clark raised an eyebrow. You're not actually considering military action against the Council? Wright's expression softened slightly. No, but I want options if this turns ugly. The vote is tomorrow. And if these restrictions pass, we need to be prepared to protect our people. The communication panel chimed. Admiral, there's an urgent message from the Europa colony. Some kind of natural disaster. They're requesting immediate assistance. Wright frowned. Europa was humanity's newest and most distant colony, home to nearly 1 million people. Put it through. The screen showed the colony's governor, his face streaked with dust and what looked like blood. Admiral, we've experienced a massive seismic event. The main habitat dome is failing. We have thousands trapped and injured. Our emergency systems are overwhelmed. We'll dispatch relief ships immediately, Wright said. Hold on, Governor. But as Wright began organizing the relief effort, another message arrived, this one from Ambassador Johnson. The Council had classified the Europa situation as a contained planetary emergency, and under the proposed security measures, was denying permission for additional human ships to enter that sector until Council inspectors could assess the situation. This is insane, Wright exploded. There are human lives at stake. It's a test, Clark said quietly. They want to see if we'll follow their rules even when our own people are dying. Wright's face hardened. Well, they're about to get their answer. Ready all available ships. We're going to Europa, with or without their permission. Meanwhile, on Council Station Prime, a different sort of confrontation was unfolding. Catherine Lewis, a brilliant human scientist who had been working with Council researchers, stood before Counselor Neem. In the months since first contact, Neem had become humanity's strongest advocate on the Council. "You have to help us," Lewis pleaded. "The Europa colony needs immediate assistance. The Council's restrictions will cost thousands of lives." Neem's large eyes reflected genuine distress. "I understand your concern, Dr. Lewis, but the vote is tomorrow, and until then, the emergency protocols must be followed." "This isn't about protocols," Lewis insisted. "It's about lives. Real people with families who will die while bureaucrats debate." Something in her words seemed to reach Neem. After a moment's hesitation, the alien said, "There may be a way, but it involves meeting someone few humans have ever seen." Hours later, Lewis found herself in a section of the station she hadn't known existed. The corridors were ancient, with technology that looked nothing like the Council's current designs. Neem led her to a chamber where a being waited, tall, with features that seemed to shift and change as she looked at it. "I am the Elder One," the being said, its voice somehow inside Lewis's mind rather than reaching her ears. "One of the founders of what you now call the Galactic Council." Lewis stared in amazement. You created the Council?" "We formed it from necessity," the Elder One replied, "to prevent the galaxy from tearing itself apart again." A door opened, and Lewis was surprised to see Admiral Wright enter, accompanied by Ambassador Johnson. "We brought him through the emergency. Quantum communicator," Neem explained. "The Elder One wished to speak with your military leader directly." The Elder One gestured, and the chamber filled with holographic images, scenes of devastating warfare on a scale Lewis could barely comprehend. Entire planets burned. Star systems collapsed. Billions died in moments. "This was the 3-century war," the Elder One said, started by a species called the Precursors, who shared many traits with humanity. Wright watched the images with a soldier's eye. "What happened?" "The Precursors were innovative, adaptable. When they discovered the Council was restricting certain technologies, they rebelled. The war that followed nearly destroyed galactic civilization." The Elder One's form shifted again. "We fear humans could follow the same path." Wright's eyes narrowed. "So you decided to contain us before we could become a threat?" "We hope to integrate humanity gradually," the Elder One said. "But your responses to our tests exceeded all projections. Your actions at Helix therefore demonstrated military thinking that hasn't been seen in the galaxy for millennia." "We saved lives," Wright pointed out. "Yes, through tactics our species would never attempt. Your willingness to take calculated risks, to improvise with limited resources, to ignore established protocols when necessary, these are powerful traits." The Elder One's form stabilized into something almost human. "And they terrify many Council species." Lewis stepped forward. "But these same traits could help the Council. We don't want war. We want to contribute." The Elder One studied her. "Perhaps. But history suggests that species with your capabilities eventually clash with the established order when they feel constrained." "Then don't constrain us." "Right," said bluntly. "Work with us as equals." The chamber fell silent. Finally, the Elder One spoke again. "I have a proposal. I will help your Europa colony, immediately, using technology the Council rarely employs. In exchange, I ask that humanity agree to certain transparent safeguards, not hidden restrictions." "What kind of safeguards?" Wright asked suspiciously. "Joint Human Council oversight of your most advanced research, cultural exchange programs to build understanding, and human representation on the Council's inner circle, where the true decisions are made." Lewis and Wright exchanged shocked looks. "You're offering us a seat at the real table," Wright said slowly. "With real power and responsibility," the Elder One confirmed. "We cannot remove the fear many feel toward humanity's potential, but we can channel it into cooperation rather than containment. Johnson, who had been silent until now, asked, "Why? Why offer this when the rest of the council wants to restrict us?" The Elder One's form shifted once more, showing glimpses of a civilization far more advanced than even the council's current technology. Because the galaxy faces threats greater than you know. The council's stagnation, our reliance on protocols, and predictability may not be enough to face what is coming. Humanity's adaptability, properly directed, could be an asset rather than a threat. 2 days later, the full council convened to vote on the human restrictions. But instead of the expected debate, they were shocked when the Elder One appeared, something that happened perhaps once in a century, with Admiral Wright and Catherine Lewis at its side. "The vote is cancelled," the Elder One announced. "In its place, I propose a new covenant with humanity, not as subjects to be controlled, but as partners in galactic security." The council erupted in surprise and confusion. Councillor Drav rose to object but faltered when the Elder One revealed the success of its intervention at Europa, where advanced technology had stabilized the colony without a single additional death. "Humanity has something we have lost," the Elder One told the assembled council. "The ability to see beyond established patterns, to innovate when threatened, to bend without breaking. Yes, these traits make them potentially dangerous as enemies, but invaluable as allies." From the highest tier, Grand Counselor Zenith's glowing eyes studied the humans thoughtfully. "Perhaps," the ancient being finally said, "it is not humanity that must change to fit the council, but the council that must remember how to adapt." As the new agreement was drafted, Lewis found herself standing beside the Elder One. "You never answered Admiral Wright's question fully," she said quietly. "Why trust us when we could become like the precursors?" The Elder One's form shifted one final time, revealing a hint of something familiar in its features. "Because unlike the precursors, when humanity encountered other species, your first instinct was to save lives rather than take them. You risked your ships for aliens you barely knew. That suggests you might use your war capabilities differently than those who came before." As Lewis watched the council members debate the new arrangement, she realized the truth. What made humans formidable in war was indeed what the council feared most, but it was also humanity's greatest gift to a galaxy that had forgotten how to change.